Hi, I'm Greg Schaefer. Welcome to the virtual CISO moment. This is a little bit of a different episode. I had a cancellation, and instead of filling it, I wanted to do something a little bit different for y'all. I want to introduce you to a new project that I've been involved with for a little while. If you're following me on LinkedIn or on other platforms, you probably already know. It's called Tech Talk by Greg Schaefer with Greg Schaefer. It's on a television show on NowMedia, and we air every Thursday at 4 o'clock Central. If you're not in the broadcast area, you can always get it online or on Roku. And what I like to do is that I like to present to you a couple of segments just as an introduction to the show. Hopefully, that'll be something that you'd want to maybe look at, and you might find some value. It's not just about cyber, some interesting conversations. And the first one that I'd like to present to you is with Byron Reese, and he is the author of The Fourth Age: Smart Robots, Conscious Computers, and the Future of Humanity. That's a book that tackles artificial intelligence, robots, automation, and the future of work. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Generative AI has been around for not too long. It's become very popular. And so suddenly people are talking about artificial intelligence. But actually, artificial intelligence has been around for quite some time. And so to help unpack some of the potential and the concerns and the opportunities associated with artificial intelligence, Byron Reese, author of The Fourth Age: Smart Robots, Conscious Computers, and the Future of Humanity, joins us to help unpack all of this. Byron, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
That is a long title. I
Yeah.
stumbled over it, but I understand that it's probably going to be rather complicated. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's kind of begin with, how do you see the relationship between artificial intelligence and human potential evolving over the next decade? I mean, there's the dystopian view, I guess, that we see in the movies sometime. Are we going to see that, or is it going to be a little bit less intense?
Well, I hope there's a third choice and it's not awful, slightly less than awful. And those are my only two choices. I think it's going to usher in a new golden age of humanity. I mean, if you really want to tell the story in a long form, I think that, I think it's a 4 billion-year-old story. We started 3.5 billion years, life just stored data in DNA, and then it moved into the brains, and we externalized it and wrote it. And we slowly learned how to save knowledge so that generation by generation it accumulated. And now with this generative AI, we're finally bringing it all together into one thing. You know, when you search for Google, like what's the difference between a cold and the flu, it gives you 30 million answers, but you just want one. And that's because it's all still siloed. And so what we're going to see, I think, is something that will be basically a collective memory of the planet, every cause and effect, so that they say Solomon was the wisest person who ever lived. Well, everybody in the future will be wiser than Solomon because everybody's going to have the life experiences of everybody who lived before them, informing their decisions. I think it's the beginning of a shift as profound as the evolution of brains, of life itself. Like, this is a big deal.
So adding on the layer of the interface of now the generative AI, that's sort of expanding the use so that everybody can tap into this global knowledge?
I think so. I mean, artificial intelligence is an unfortunate term because it means two unrelated things, unrelated. And one of them you obliquely referred to when you said we see in the movies. That's something called general AI, and we don't have that. Nobody knows how to build it. And I hold a minority view, probably 5% among AI people, that it's impossible. It cannot be done. It is not possible because people are not machines. And if you are not a machine, then we're not going to build a machine that duplicates what you do. Then there's another kind of AI called narrow AI, and that's what we do know how to do. And that's where you just take a lot of data and you look for patterns in it and use those patterns to make predictions. And we're real good at that, and we're getting better. But that isn't going to take over the world. I mean, what people worry about with that is, the jobs are going away or something. But that isn't going to wake up, and it's not Skynet. It's just actually a pretty boring technology.
We've talked about on this show beforehand how just the internet in itself has helped with it. Never didn't necessarily take away jobs, but it helped with productivity. Certainly, some jobs were changed, but in the long run, it really advanced to an extent human evolution or human interaction.
100%.
And so
100%.
you're thinking that AI is going to continue to take that path.
Absolutely. I've spent a lot of time researching this, and I think the half-life of a job is about 50 years. I think every 50 years, we lose half of all the jobs. I think we lost about half of them since 75, and they lost about half of them since 25, and they lost about half of them. So over and over, we're losing about half the jobs as technology advances, and yet we maintain full employment and rising wages. So how do you do that? How are you constantly shedding jobs? And it's because technology creates these new opportunities. Now, the reason it freaks people out, and we'll use your example, the internet. If you went back to the 90s and you said, "Hey, in the future, billions of people are going to have this. What's going to happen to jobs?" They would have said that's a job killer. The yellow pages are going away, and travel agents are going away, and stockbrokers are going away, and newspapers are going away, and shopping malls are going away. And you would have been right about everything. You would have gotten it all right. But what you would not have said, what they would not have said is, oh, there's going to be Uber and eBay and Etsy and Airbnb and all these new things. So it's easy to see one side of the equation, what the technology is going to eliminate, but none of us can see what it's going to create. The thing to always remember is these are, as you said, productivity tools. And increasing human productivity is always, that's an absolute statement, always good for people. And if you don't believe that, you should advocate for a law that requires everybody to work with one arm tied behind their back. Because if you did that, you would have created a bunch of new jobs because you need twice as many people to do anything. But you know what? Those jobs wouldn't pay anything because you just destroyed everybody's productivity. So what these technologies do is they give everybody a third arm. They're good for everyone, everyone.
Well, let's dig a little bit into your book, and that's The Fourth Age. In your book, you talk about AI and the automation's impact on society. The concept of the half-life being 50 years, I've not heard that before. I love that, and that makes total sense. And it kind of prompts you to want to think forward because, as you said, a lot of the things that we take for granted today, Uber being a great example, nobody could have even fathomed about back then. It would not have even entered into anyone's mind. So you're going to have this impact on society. What do you think are going to be like some or the most transformative change coming down? I mean, can you actually predict what the next 30, 40 years are going to look like?
I think we'll lose half of all the jobs. Unfortunately, it's actually going quite slow. For all these people have been predicting for so many years that we're about to have all this unemployment. What we see is the opposite. I can't think of one job that's been eliminated in the last 5 years. Oh, why? So this idea that these things are just going to wholesale wash them away is just wrong. I mean, what you said is really true. When a new technology comes out, you can only see it in terms of the old technology. So when TV came out, they said it's radio with pictures, and so the first TV shows were just people in front of microphones reading. Only years later do you get Seinfeld and all these other things. And what you just said is entirely correct. It takes us a while. Nobody, and it will be the young people who come up with these kind of new ways because we're people my age are kind of locked into it. We aren't going to be able to see what is possible with the new technology in the way that somebody who is not encumbered by all the old technology is able to.
And I think it's important to point out that I think arguably, like Bill Gates, for example, one of the most could be called one of the more visionaries, if you will, of the computer age, the founder of Microsoft and all of that. But even he said, and I might get the quote a little bit wrong, but I believe he said in the earlier mid 90s that nobody's going to have any need for more than 640K on their machine for as far as memory goes. And you couldn't run a simple app on your phone if you just had that amount. So there's certainly going to be some opportunities for enhancing human creativity and problem solving. Got one or two examples of that, perhaps?
Certainly. I have a deep held belief that if there is a job that a machine can do, a job that a machine can, in theory, do, whether you have the machine or not, whether the machine's been invented or not, if a machine can do it, if you make a person do that job, we have a word for that. That word is dehumanizing. What you're saying to the person is you're like, hey, listen, a machine can do this job. I just don't have the machine. So what I need you to do is be the machine. I don't need anything about you that's human. I just want you to be a machine. And you see, if you accept the premise, can a machine do it? Yes. Then it is beneath the dignity of a person. So as far as predictions go, any job that a machine can, in theory, do, will be replaced, will be done by machines, and that will free people up to do things only people can do. And the idea that people aren't up to that or something, I mean, it's going to, the history of this planet is, survival has been kind of like until 100 years ago, 90% of us, all of us had to grow food. And that was it. And so Leonardo da Vinci 1,000 years ago, and Marie Curie, and all that was lost. And finally, we're going to automate away anything machine can do. And in doing so, we're going to free people up to be people. And that's never happened before. People have been plow mules and all of that.
I think that that's a wonderful view of the future. So how can businesses prepare for that sort of a workforce where you're not necessarily just employing people because they can act like a machine, but rather that, as you can say, they act as a person? How is that going to change the workforce?
What I would think about it is not kind of as a break of some kind. This is all has been going on for centuries, and it's just a continuation of that. So technology has kind of two things. It creates new opportunities that are high value, high skill, high wage. And what it destroys are really low end, rote kinds of things that can be automated. And so what I encourage businesses to do, and then what I encourage individuals to do, like if you're worried about this, or your kids, like what are they going to do for a living? The thing is just every day wake up and ask if there's some tiny little thing you do that's machine work that you can automate. Just the smallest thing in the world, a automatic forward, or something you have to forward all the time, or this and that. So every day look and say, is there some tiny thing I can automate? And if you do, and it saves you 3 minutes in a day, then say, what can I use that 3 minutes for with new technology? And if you just keep doing that day to day, a little bit at a time, you're always going to be automating away. What you said is it changed a lot of jobs. You're going to be automating away lots of parts of your job that can be automated away, and then using technology to create new opportunities. And I think that's accessible for everybody, up and down kind of education level, age, all of that. That's just humanity. Everybody's got a third arm. What do you want to do with it? And what you don't want to do with it is just be a 3-armed machine.
With every new technology, and every technology, I guess you could say, that's like there are ways you can use it, and certainly there would have to be some ethical considerations with regards to how you're using AI. So, what ethical considerations would come up here, or is it kind of the same thing where it's the same as any tool? It's you're just using the tool to perform a function, and the ethics come into the function that you're performing?
I think so. I mean, in the end, artificial intelligence is just math, math, just numbers, adding and subtracting numbers. And what has happened is because of movies and all of that, we have a different image of it. And so we all do something called reasoning from fictional evidence. We take that fictional evidence and we say that looks really plausible and so that isn't what this is. This is a technology that brings together the knowledge of humans and uses it to project the future. And now that we're better at collecting that knowledge and we have more compute, we're going to get better at doing that. I think we will do what Aeschylus predicted thousands of years ago when he said, we will tame the savage heart of man and make gentle the life of this world.
That's a great place to leave it. I love that view of the future, and really appreciate you coming on to unpack some of this with regards to AI. The book, again, is The Fourth Age. Byron, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We'll be right back.
Yeah, in our second segment, I'm kind of a space nerd. At least I was definitely more so when I was a kid, kind of go in and out of it. And I was really excited to have the opportunity to talk with Dr. Pamela Gay. She is senior scientist at the Planetary Science Institute. Go ahead and check it out. Welcome back to Tech Talk. I'm Greg Schaefer. Dr. Pamela Gay is back with us today. Really excited to continue our conversation with her. She is, of course, the senior scientist at the Planetary Institute. Planetary Science Institute. She is also the co-host of Astronomy Cast, host of Escape Velocity Space News, and does a whole lot more. Dr. Gay, thank you so much for joining us again.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I love new shows getting a start and getting to be part of seeing you on your climb.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm looking forward to discussing more about everything space related. Of course, as I mentioned before, I have been a huge amateur space fan. I guess you can call me a fan of citizen science. And I know you talk a lot about that on your website at starstrider.com. But can you explain a little bit, first of all, what is citizen science?
The basic idea of citizen science is any of us have the ability to look out at this universe that we share, whether it be with our eyes, with our telescopes, or using software to explore existing data. And what makes someone a citizen scientist versus a professional scientist is citizen scientists are just volunteers. They're people who dedicate their time to expanding what we know by looking, reporting what they see, and sharing it out to people who help use it to publish papers. So I, as a professional researcher, get paid to work with people who are volunteering hours for projects ranging from looking to see when that nova goes off this summer somewhere in the sky. We hope we're waiting for a star that we know gets significantly brighter every few decades to do its thing, who we're looking at people who are reporting comets as they plunge into the sun. We're working with people, with my project in particular, who are willing to help us map out the surface of other worlds in our solar system, because there's still things that our human eyes and brain can do that software can't. And until computer vision gets a whole lot better, we need everyday people to help us map out other worlds in our solar system.
Does somebody have to have credentials or a degree or pass a test, or can it literally be anybody with in the case of astronomy, with a telescope and a desire?
In general, we require people to demonstrate a certain level of skill. For instance, the Minor Planet Center in Boston, they take in asteroid data collected by people all over the world who are looking at the sky and often discovering new asteroids just crossing through their images. Now, for the Minor Planet Center to be able to say, yes, you who we've never met before, yes, you have discovered a new asteroid, those people need to submit data on known objects that demonstrate the capabilities of them, their equipment, and their process. Once those folks get validated, they can go off and discover new objects. With the stuff we do with fully online citizen science, we have training images that we have people go through, and they mark out what they see in these images. And using those training images, we can say, yeah, this is someone who's actually doing a valid job and not somebody's cat that has absconded with the mouse and is trying to do science. And so there's a validation to everything that gets done, but anyone who's willing to take the time to learn a process can participate. And it's something where, if you think about it, we've always been engaging students in helping us in our research. And why can't someone like you be my peer, my colleague, my student who's learning the process?
You know, I'm going to reach back to my memory back more than 20, 25 years ago. And I'm going to guess 96, but I might be off by a little bit. And one of the coolest things that I remember as sort of an astronomy nerd was when, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a comet broke apart and collided and basically was sucked up by Jupiter. Shoemaker-Levy, I think it was, or Levy, if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Shoemaker-Levy 9, that was the summer, I believe, of 1993. I was
off
working
by
at
a few years.
Peak Observatory. Yeah, well, I was there at the observatory as a student when this happened. And so it's a strong memory for me. It was the first time I ever used this thing we call the internet today. And so it was a really cool summer.
But they were not citizen science advisors or
Levy
anything.
was.
Oh, Levy.
So here's the thing about those discoverers. It was Eugene Shoemaker, who is a planetary scientist, or he was. He's now passed away. But David Levy, he's an English major. He's a writer. He's someone who's been doing amateur astronomy since he was a small child. And over the decades of his life, he memorized so much of the sky that he could look out and say, yes, that field that has this fuzzy thing in it, that fuzzy thing wasn't there yesterday. We have now discovered a comet. And this was one of his passions that he did with his own personal equipment sitting outside.
So I guess then that could probably be one of the more famous examples of a citizen science
Discovery.
contribution to astronomy.
Yeah,
Because I was going to ask, well,
exactly.
what's a really good one? And there's one right there. That's amazing that anybody can just, with the passion and of course with some vetting, actually be a part of this. But it's sometimes difficult for folks in the general public because some of this can be really complex. I know as a science fiction fan, I always get a little bit disturbed and perturbed whenever I hear or see, I'm sure you do too, where they kind of really mess up astronomy in shows. Like,
Yeah.
Earth is like rotating in the galaxy or something like that, or we're in multiple galaxies, right? Or something along those lines. So there are some complex things going on here. Just the idea of orbital mechanics and how a comet would hit a planet, for example. But you seem to be able to make these complex scientific concepts consumable by the public, which I think is wonderful. How do you do that?
It's honestly just, we each have different things that we're passionate about doing. I too am completely a lover of science fiction. And if any of you out there ever need a science advisor for your science fiction, I am here for you. And growing up, I just wanted to understand all the science in these stories that I loved, all of the science that inspired the names of the characters. For instance, in Battlestar Galactica, that was my first passion. And along the way, everyone's like, hey, what are you doing? And when you're a kid, you learn to either get beat up or break things down into terms that make things interesting to your peers. And I was that spacey, geeky child from second grade on who was trying to explain space, trying to get other people interested, writing fan fiction. I was that kind of a nerd as a youngling. And I just kept going. And the first time I ever gave a public talk on astronomy was actually when I was in high school. I'd gone as part of a peacekeeping exchange to the Soviet Union to study at the 6-meter observatory. And when I came back, I was asked to talk about that observatory. And here I was, a kid, talking to a room full of people old enough to be my parents and grandparents about my time on the top of a mountain, half a world away. And I wanted to make them both know I understood my science and make them understand my science. And that's been my goal ever since, to make sure I understand what I'm doing at such a deep level that I can make somebody else both care about it and also understand it at least a surface level.
I remember, not directly, I was a little bit too young for this, but during what would be, I guess, considered one of the golden ages of space exploration during the 60s. It captured the imagination of children, the moon landing with Apollo 11. I was only 2 at the time, that's why I didn't remember that, but I did remember one of the later ones, I think probably the last one, which I think was 17. Lots happened in space exploration, and that was also the beginning of the golden age of sci-fi. You had Star Trek, which was a radically different show, showed us being able to get to planets just almost like that. You mentioned Battlestar Galactica. Of course, Star Wars was during this time as well, too. So we've kind of grown up with the idea that it should be so easy to get to planets, but it's really not that easy because of the vast distances. So we're currently looking at eventually trying to get to Mars, maybe in our lifetimes. That might happen. Well, what are some of your thoughts as far as space exploration? Obviously, we're not going to see anything outside of the solar system as far as human travel goes. So let's keep it like kind of local to the local solar system.
So this is one of these things where it all comes down to how much money are the nations of the world willing to put into space exploration. Going to space is an endeavor that requires multinational cooperation. It requires thousands of people working to innovate new technologies that have never existed before. And this isn't a cheap process. This is actually something I'm doing a lot of writing on lately, because of NASA's current plans to return to the moon with the Artemis missions and the unfortunate recent cancellation of the Viper rover, that it just got so over budget that in order to keep everything else going, for want of $100 million, a completed mission has been canceled. All it needed was to be launched. And so we have to find the willingness to say, we're going to spend what is necessary to ensure our astronauts get to space safe, stay in space safe and healthy, which means solving radiation problems, solving nutrition problems. How do we feed people on these long duration missions? And then we have to develop all of the technology that allows them to not just go there, but come back. We were working towards testing some ideas with the Mars sample return mission, which is, again, also something that is on the edge of cancellation because the budget that NASA has is just so small and has been held flat for so many years, while the costs of facilities, the costs of everything associated with doing science is actually rising slightly faster than inflation. So if you hold NASA's budget flat relative to inflation, but all the costs are going up, that means that year on year, we're actually seeing a decrease in the money available to do science. And we can't do the innovation necessary if we don't have the money to pay humans and develop the technologies that allows us to become a multiplanetary species.
Which is so unfortunate because we've learned so much from exploration, and some of our technologies, if we couldn't do a lot of the communication that we do, the internet, a lot of that came from satellite communications, and even Tang, I remember back in the day. So, well, Dr. Gay, we could talk about this for hours on end. I find it fascinating. Really appreciate you taking time out to chat a little bit more space with us today.
Always happy to be here. Always happy to come back. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about things I love on your wonderful new show.
Oh, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll be right back.
Now you've got a little taste of Tech Talk. Hopefully you'll join me on Thursdays, 4 Central on NowMedia, and think you'll enjoy it. It's a little bit different. I certainly enjoy it too. It's you know, sometimes you just need to do different things in life, and I certainly enjoy bringing not only these stories about information security to you on the Virtual CISO Moment podcast, but I also enjoy now this new outlet. So again, hope that you'll catch us there, and until then, stay secure.